I'm not actually quite sure whether we were fourth because we begin with the letter A, you know. But either way around, I am James Wallbank from Access Space. I'm going to talk about 3 dimensions of innovation. This comes from our experience of working with people, working with technology, trying to help people to realize new, exciting ideas. I'm going to talk about technical skills. That's knowledge, ideas. You either know it or you don't. This sort of thought should be quite familiar to us. I'm going to talk about a social aspect. We've already had a fantastic presentation about communication. And of course, communication isn't just about getting your ideas across. It's also about awareness, perhaps of markets, of your audience, of having a conversation. And I'm also going to talk about creativity, which is closely associated with divergent thinking. This is the ability to come up with new ideas, innovative solutions, if you like, to answer questions which you haven't been asked. All this actually started in the mid-1990s and came out of a fairly straightforward question, perhaps deceptively straightforward. What is trash? The city at the time was in a somewhat challenging economic circumstance. Historically, there was a low uptake of information communication technologies in South Yorkshire. And I and my friends were surprised to find out that a significant number of computers were being thrown away. So not simply thinking what is trash, but what is trash technology? The way we proposed to find out was to ask people to give it to us. What slightly took us aback was the sheer scale of the issue. Me and my friends were artists, and so we took technology and started to make it into displays, exhibitions, artworks, installations. Hopefully, they were kind of inspiring. But that was the problem. It's all very well to inspire people if you're an artist, but if you're inspiring people to give you their trash, then you can end up, as I did, in a warehouse with about 2,000 computers and no plan. So what's the quality of these objects which makes them useless? This continued to be a problem for us. So the solution that we could come to in somewhat a certain level of desperation, I have to admit, was to conclude that we simply weren't creative enough and that what we needed to do was involve the public. So we opened a centre, Access Space, in the year 2000, inviting anyone to come in and tell us, please, how can you be creative with this technology? Now, Access Space is open for 5 days a week. Anyone can come and walk in and take part. It involves a huge range of people with a huge range of activities. Here in this photograph, you can see people undertaking web design, dealing with making music, doing soldering and electronics to make magnetic sculptures, and doing embroidery. And of course, all the time, talking with each other. Now, the significance of a whole range of people from different educational backgrounds, from different areas of the city, with different life experiences coming together in the same space is highly significant. In that particular case, where you've got all sorts of different people talking with each other, the chances of information interchange happening in a productive way are greatly increased. This is building collective intelligence. Now, over the years, we've helped thousands of people to realize all sorts of projects. We've got live coding, exhibitions, artworks, massively multi-artist artworks. We've had symposia, discussions, demonstrations, and in many cases what's happening is the activities are going on simultaneously in the space. Here you can see an electronics workshop going on at the same time that we have a very successful 20 by 20 exhibition. This is one of our most successful annual events, and it invites artists and anyone to submit artworks, which we will show, as long as they're 20 inches by 20 inches. So there's a very simple criterion for success. It involves measuring, okay? Last year we had our most successful show, which involved 67 artists. I have to say that if all you want to take part this year, we'll have to get another venue. But the key thing here is not to set an agenda too closely, not to make a difficult hoop for people to jump through, instead to give people space and opportunity where they can start to think in a divergent manner. We're not just doing this in Access Space. Access Space has actually had significant impacts in some other countries, but also across the city. We're helping other communities to build their own media labs. Now, it has to be said, it's significantly more convenient to have a media lab installed by experts. But if you do it yourself, particularly if you do it yourself with available trash technology, you learn, you build community, you build a sense of engagement and involvement. You really get to understand getting to grips with the problem of what happens when it doesn't work, which is, of course, the way it starts. And, of course, at the same time, people have a lot of fun. We've started to get extremely interested in the opportunities that can be presented by emerging technologies. We're thinking particularly about digital manufacturing, things like laser cutting, CNC, 3D printing, and electronics, so embedded control systems, things like Arduino, Raspberry Pi. One of the significant things about these technologies is that the price of them is plummeting. We are indeed cheapskates. We don't like to pay for technology, but if we do have to, let's pay a lot less than we have before. Now, these technologies are now becoming sufficiently cheap that they're starting to permeate society, and we believe there's a huge opportunity here for new enterprises, new ideas, new creativity. So what's happened? Well, we've started to build our own fab lab, a fabrication laboratory, to go alongside our media lab. We've got any amount of mysterious electronics, control systems, weird hybrid bass guitar stroke, video games. I'm not quite sure what it is. We've had a newspaper made with embroidery. So the accelerating potential of using digitally controlled tools allows us to make something that would have taken weeks of labor every day. So we've also had an attempt to bring aerospace to Sheffield with what we understand to be a highly innovative laser cut boomerang. Particularly interesting design challenge because a laser cutter can't create the aerofoil section which is needed for a boomerang to return. But designer Scott Hawkins has managed to solve this problem, and this product is going to be launched later this year, and presumably is going to be returning shortly thereafter. We've got ArtBot. ArtBot is not simply a mechanism for daubing paint. It's actually a fully autonomous robotic artist. It can see and it can respond to its own marks in all sorts of artistic ways you can possibly understand. We've got JunkBot, which is a CNC machine. It's a CNC engraving machine made entirely from trash. Just to give you an idea of the Heath Robinson nature of this, it's actually created from 2 scanners which have been taken apart and mounted at 90 degrees to each other. But you can see the potential for experimentation here is huge. We've had designs, musical instruments, toys, all sorts of products now it's possible for us to create on a local basis, which have got a kind of a level of finish that means that they could have significant impacts on the market. But this is a lot of fun. But can it have these crucial, make these crucial differences for Sheffield? We think it can. About 8 months ago, a fellow called Paul walked into Access Space and said, I think I've got an idea for a product. Well, I'm not sure, but can you help us make a prototype? So we did. We used a laser cutter and some acrylic sheeting to make a box, which Paul went away with and was very unsatisfied with. He came back a week later, made another version, and the third version became this product, the Pybo. I talked to Paul last week, and I understand that now 50,000 of these have been shipped, $12.95 each. You do the maths. Prematurely, the company which has emerged from this product, now employs 3 full-time staff, 1 part-time member of staff, and 10 casual workers that typically do 3 to 4 jobs per week. So, yes, it can have significant impact, and in fact, Paul's product has now made it to the front cover of Wired magazine this month. So, I think it's pretty good. So this is a fantastic Sheffield success story about relocalizing manufacture and relocalizing skill. But the question is, what is it that made Paul's enterprise successful? We're starting to realize that these 3 factors all play a part. On the one hand, understanding the technology, that technical skill that I talked about, real knowledge and understanding. Mobilizing your connections. So this is about being aware of the market and being a great communicator, able to get that information out there. But also applying creative thinking, having a lot of fun. We're pretty sure that when Paul walked into Access Space, he didn't have a formed business plan. He had an idea for something that was kind of cool. And basically, he messed around. And it was that kind of creative playfulness that has actually manifested in a product which people really like. But how do these 3 factors interact with each other? We like to describe them as 3 dimensions. And the significance about calling them dimensions is that one cannot substitute for another. It doesn't matter how technically expert you are. If you can't communicate your skills, you will not prevail in terms of bringing your ideas to the market. Similarly, you can be as creative as you like, but if you don't know how to do things, if you don't factually understand some key skills, you won't be able to realize your visions. Now, it might be that one person can't embody all of these things, but it could be that a small team can. Now, there's a catch. Our education system is strongly focused on skills. And skills are great. They're really useful. They're absolutely essential. They're easy to measure. They're straightforward to teach. It's clear when pupils have picked them up. They're highly measurable. Good schools, good universities also do a fairly good job of imbuing students with the ability to communicate and an awareness of the outside world. But tests show that this capability for divergent thinking, the center of creativity, does not improve with education. What we're aiming at is something a bit more like this. Highly creative, highly communicative, highly expert. That gives a huge area of possibility in which innovation can happen. We can, if I can get the slide to work, we can address these two problems: wasted material, wasted time. We're in a position of significant ecological and economic crisis. We simply cannot afford to throw material away unnecessarily, but also we can't afford to leave people's time unmobilized. But we are going to have to mobilize all three of these capabilities: technical, creative, and social. Let's bring disruptive technology to as many people as we can. Now, this isn't just about including people involving lots of people who might otherwise be excluded. This is about bringing to bear as many diverse perspectives as possible to the problem. It's about building collective intelligence. But we have to engage with these technologies as developers, not just as consumers. This sort of brings me back to the question of what is trash. Well, you know, I've spent 15 years wading it now. And I've started to realize that actually there is no characteristic of matter which makes it rubbish. It's actually a definition that's created by ourselves. Essentially, trash can be absolutely anything you want it to be if you fail to apply creativity. And of course, that's particularly significant when you think that the most valuable technology that access space is interacting with is people. Now, I'd like to just give a quick word of thanks to Pi Moroni, the business that has been started through the PIBO, who have been supporting access space and have been really enthusiastic about the idea that the space can be here for the next organization to emerge from this process. So I think that's a very generous thing on their part. I'd also like to thank Norton Mayfield Architects, who are convinced that their profession, architecture and design, is going to be turned upside down by these new advanced manufacturing technologies, and the European Union, who have been very helpful in supporting our business incubation efforts. We're moving into a stage where at Access Space we're looking for our program to be driven more and more by your ideas. So we'd very much like to hear from people in this room, people who see this presentation, and we'd like to work with you to make something exciting happen. Thank you very much.